Okay, guys, we're going to try a different format and we're going to be doing a PowerPoint presentation. I've used this in the past, and you're going to have your lecture guides and you'll be filling information just like as if this was a regular lecture. This is chapter 24, it's all of chapter 24, and it's looking at biological chemical reactions. This is the nuts and bolts of biochemistry. The things that you learn in biology hopefully will be seen with new light as we go over a lot of these molecules. We're going to be taking a look at carbohydrates, then lipids, then proteins, but today we're just going to be taking a look at carbohydrates, and the next lecture will be taking a look at lipids. Let's go ahead and start taking a look at polymers, which we've seen a little bit with our previous labs. This is organic chemistry, but here's the definition of organic compounds. Now, if you think organic, you might think of going into a grocery store and then taking a look at the milk or taking a look at a certain type of product and say, oh, this is organic. What does it mean to be organic? Well, if it's food, it means that it's not prepared with any types of hormones or chemicals like free-range chickens and milk that comes from cows that haven't been injected with compounds that will increase their milk production. That's what we probably would consider to be organic. But in chemistry, organic compounds have a very specific definition. That definition of organic means that it contains carbon. So these molecules that contain carbon are going to be considered organic compounds. So what is an inorganic compound? Well, an inorganic compound is the opposite of an organic compound, which means that it's non-carbon. It's non-biological as well. So all life forms contain carbon, whether you're a virus or whether you're a creature such as ourselves. But non-biological materials are going to be not containing carbon. So for example, water and minerals. What we've studied most of this year is inorganic chemistry. Water is H2O. Minerals such as potassium, sodium, any of the calcium, magnesium, any of those compounds that you find on the periodic table that do not contain carbon are going to be inorganic compounds. So the summary of this is your organic compounds contain carbon, your inorganic compounds do not contain carbon, they're non-biological material. Going on to the next subject, we're going to take a look at the energy of molecules. For this, I want to give you a concrete thing to visualize, and that's going to be a glow stick. So imagine you have a glow stick and it's sitting in your hands. It's not quite yet glowing. What do you have to do to get it to glow? You have to snap it and to break it. So once you snap the glow stick, it then is going to release its energy. The chemicals that are in their specialized containers are going to combine, they're going to release light. So I want you to think of that glow stick. So if you break a glow stick, you're going to release energy. Now that glow stick is like these bonds that you see within, I'm going to show you right here. You see these bonds right here in between the molecules of the first slide. What we have here is these are carbon-carbon bonds, and they contain energy within them. And this is going to be broken up into smaller pieces, and you'll see that they no longer have their bonds. This has a lot of structure over here. It has a lot of organization, has a lot of order. And it's going to take energy to have this molecule and to build this molecule. Therefore, since this has all the bonds and has all the glow sticks, when we snap all these bonds, we're going to release energy, and we're going to break those bonds and get these individual pieces over here. So when breaking a bond, energy is going to be released, just like snapping the glow stick is going to release the light. This is going to be producing simpler molecules. So when you have very complex molecules, such as a long chain carbohydrate that you're eating in your bread, that has lots of energy on the inside of it that can be released when it goes inside your body. Going on to the next one, we see when you are making a bond, well, a bond just doesn't form by itself. It requires energy. Energy is needed to put all those pieces together. It's like building a building structure. You need to put energy into building your tower or your building or whatever structure that you're going to be making. So you're going to be making more complex molecules in the end, and you'll notice with these is now we have the bonds back in there again. It's because we added energy. We had simple molecules, we add energy, we get more complex molecules. If you start off with complex molecules and you break them down into simpler ones, it's going to release energy as you break those bonds. So there's lots of energy stored in those carbon-carbon bonds. So we'll take a look at now what we saw in the lab with the monomers, dimers, and polymers. So here we go. This should look familiar to you. A mer is a unit, so just a unit. And mono means one, di means two, and poly means many. So when you combine these together, you're going to have a monomer, which is a single unit, one unit. Dimer is two units. And polymer, of course, is going to mean many minutes or many units. So the three major groups that we're going to be taking a look at, these are called macromolecules. The reason why they're called macromolecules is because macro means large. These are going to be our large polymers, where simple molecules have been chained or linked together to create these larger molecules. They're going to be carbohydrates, which are our sugars. They're going to be our lipids, which are going to be our fats and our oils. And then we'll take a look at also proteins. And there's two different types of proteins that we've taken a look at. There is going to be structural proteins and functional proteins, and those will be separated into different lectures as well. So carbohydrates. This is really interesting. Why is a carbohydrate called a carbohydrate? Well, here's glucose, and glucose has the chemical formula of C6H12O6. Now, if you have the ability to write down that somewhere, C6H12O6. And what I want you to do is I want you to reduce those numbers, divide everything by 6. And what will you get? You'll get C1H2O1. In other words, you get CH2O. So this has carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. The C stands for the carbon, which is why it's called carbo, and the H2O is the hydrate, because that is the basic formula of a carbohydrate. It's C1H2O1, or CH2O. So the importance of carbohydrates is these are our sugars, and they're burned in oxygen to produce energy. You might remember this from biology. This is called respiration. So what we're doing is, in this hexagon chain, there are these bonds. These bonds each contain energy within their carbon-carbon structure. These bonds are then going to be sent in what's called the Krebs cycle, which we'll see on the last day of this series of lectures. And these carbon-carbon bonds are going to be broken, and they're going to be releasing energy. And we'll capitalize on that energy in the form of ATP, which you might remember also from biology. So carbohydrates, they're formed of carbons, hydrogens, oxygens, and their primary function is energy. So here's a couple types of carbohydrates. We have what's called a monosaccharide. Going back to our prefixes, mono means one, and saccharide means sugar. So you might be able to remember this because we're looking at carbohydrates, and a saccharide starts with an S as well, and the sac in the Latin-based roots means sugar. So we have a single sugar. That's what monosaccharide means. So these are very sweet, and they dissolve very easily as well. So this is your common examples of glucose. Glucose is sweet. You can taste it. It dissolves very easily. Fructose is also sweet. You might have heard of high fructose corn syrup. Okay, that's a common product that's found in many food items. So the reason why they're sweet and dissolve easily is because they're very small molecules. You have this hexagon, you have this pentagon over here. Here's the hexagon, here's the pentagon. And what you have is this molecule is small enough to fit inside your taste buds. And because they're small enough to fit inside your taste buds, they're going to trigger your receptors on the inside of your taste buds that you are tasting something sweet. It's actually a chemical reaction that's taking place at the surface of your tongue, which then triggers your brain to indicate you are tasting something sweet. So the examples of this again are glucose and fructose. Let's go on to the next molecule, which is a little bit bigger. So we're now building these molecules. We started off with a monosaccharide. We're now going to a disaccharide. Di is the prefix meaning two. Saccharide, again, meaning sugar. So now we have two sugars. These are also sweet and dissolve easily. Why is that so? It's because they're very small and they can fit inside your taste buds. Therefore, they're going to trigger your receptors that you are tasting something sweet. How do you make a disaccharide? You can take two sugars and link them together. And a common one is going to be called sucrose or table sugar. This is the white sugar that you find on your table, you put in your coffee, you put it in baking products, and it is formed up of two sugars. And if you remember the previous two monosaccharides that we saw, the glucose and the fructose, those will link together to form this sucrose, which is a disaccharide. It's a dimer of two sugars. So we saw monosaccharide, we saw disaccharides. Now we're going to take a look at polysaccharides, mono, poly. There are going to be three polysaccharides that are of primary importance. So polysaccharides means many sugars. These are not sweet and they don't dissolve. Well, this is such a long molecule. This is thousands of sugars long that it can't fit inside your taste bud. Not only does it not fit in your taste bud, but you can't taste it because it has a very, very hard time dissolving inside your mouth anyway. So it has a hard time dissolving in water, but even if it did dissolve in water, you can't taste it. Why can't you taste it? Because it can't fit inside your taste buds. It's too big, it's too bulky. So we can't see or we can't taste this first molecule. The example of this first one is called cellulose. Cellulose is the fiber. This is what I linked together to make that orange edible slime. And it's linear glucoses. It's 1,000 units long. Take a look at this chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 6 of the glucoses that are linked together with these carbon-oxygen-carbon bonds. They form thousands of units long to form these long chains. And you can actually see them with this picture of the cell wall of a plant. All these strings, all these fibers, this is the cell wall of a plant. So plants use this for cell walls. So a lot of people will say you should have fiber in your diet because these molecules are bulky, these molecules are big. Our body actually can't break down this molecule. So this molecule goes right through you, meaning this molecule is not going to provide any calories for you. So a lot of diet foods might contain high amounts of fiber and they bulk up their food with fiber because that molecule is going to fill your stomach with space, but it's not going to fill you with calories. So that's a common use for this molecule in food products. The next molecule is going to be starch. Take a look at the structure, how we have those 6 units, 6 hexagon sugars like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it's no longer linear. It's lightly branched. We form these side chains on this. So this is stored in plants for energy. And this is really interesting because you can see inside these plant cells, here are some pictures of plant cells on the lower right, and on the inside are what are called starch granules. This is the storage form of energy for plants. So during the day, what they do is they are doing photosynthesis. They're making all of their glucoses during their day, and they take those glucoses and they store them in the form of starch, like this. Because a plant is still alive at night, but it is not photosynthesizing. So a plant needs to so-called eat during the nighttime hours when it can't photosynthesize. And what it's doing is it's relying upon its starch storage, these starch granules, which are packed with glucose, but they're lightly branched glucoses in this molecule called starch. So have a storage form. And it is not called starch, though. It is a highly branched molecule, and it's called glycogen. So glycogen is this highly branched glucose. It's not just a lightly branched, it is highly branched glucose. And this is stored in animals for energy. So it's really strange that what we have is we have this molecule that we eat in plants, which is called starch. Think of corn, for example, has a lot of starch in it. So you're eating this corn and you're digesting this starch, which is full of these lightly branched sugars. Okay, our body can't use those sugars in that form. So what it does is it chops them up into really, really tiny pieces called glucose. And then what it does is it reassembles them back into this large clunky molecule called glycogen, this highly branched molecule. And then when we need energy, this is how we get it. We get it from the glycogen. So any carbohydrate that we eat is going to go into our bodies. This starch, for example, is going to go into our bodies, and we're going to be breaking it up into individual sugars. That's going to go right into our bloodstream. That's going to stimulate our insulin. We're going to be, the insulin will then tell all your cells to suck up all the sugar, and then your cells will suck up the sugar, and they're going to create this molecule called glycogen. So when we need it and we're starting to run our marathon, what's going to happen is we're going to have our glycogen stores all packed with all these sugars. And when we need that sugar for energy, these little 6-carbon rings of glucose are going to be snapped off and broken one by one by one. And then that's going to be going into our mitochondria to give us the energy that we need in order to function properly.